What if the single greatest obstacle standing between you and the life you want to live isn't luck or talent or circumstance, but your own lack of self-discipline? 2,000 years ago, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength, the kind forged through relentless self-mastery, is what Stoicism has always been about. It's not just a philosophy for ancient warriors and statesmen. It's a battle-tested system for anyone who's ever felt trapped by procrastination, distraction, or the chaos of their own desires. And here's the truth most people never confront. Without discipline, even the most brilliant ideas, the grandest dreams, remain prisoners of the mind. Think about the last time you set a goal. Maybe it was waking up earlier, finally starting that project, or breaking a bad habit. How long did it last before life got in the way? The Stoics understood this struggle deeply. They didn't just preach about discipline. They built an entire way of life around 44 concrete practices designed to train the mind like a muscle. These weren't theoretical ideals, they were daily drills, honed in the fires of war, political upheaval, and personal loss. From Seneca's pre-dawn journaling rituals to Epictetus' brutal honesty about what we can and cannot control, these methods were meant to turn intention into unshakable action. This video isn't just about philosophy, it's about transformation. Imagine waking up each day with the clarity to focus on what truly matters, the resilience to shrug off setbacks, and the quiet confidence of someone who knows they can trust themselves. That's what happens when you apply Stoic discipline not as a concept, but as a daily practice. Over the next 44 steps, we'll dismantle the myths that make self-discipline feel like deprivation and replace them with tools that make it feel like liberation. Because the ultimate freedom isn't doing whatever you want, it's finally becoming who you're meant to be. The first practice, morning reflection, is where true discipline begins. Picture this: instead of reaching for your phone the moment you wake up, you pause. You take a deep breath and ask yourself one simple question: how would a Stoic prepare for today? This isn't about adding another task to your morning routine. It's about reclaiming the first quiet moments of your day for deliberate thought. Seneca put it bluntly: begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life. For the Stoics, morning reflection wasn't just a habit, it was armor against chaos. Imagine a surgeon pausing before scrubbing in, mentally rehearsing the procedure while reminding herself, "Today, I will act with skill and compassion regardless of distractions." Or a teacher sipping coffee while jotting in a journal, "However my students behave today, I will respond with patience." This practice roots you in what Stoics called prohersis, your power to choose how you meet whatever comes. Modern life bombards us with urgency, but morning reflection creates a buffer. It's the difference between reacting to emails like a pinball and entering your day like an archer, eyes fixed on the target. Here's how to start. Tonight, place a notebook by your bed. Tomorrow, before checking notifications, write one intention, not a to-do list, but a principle. Today, I will listen more than I speak. I will embrace discomfort as growth. Keep it short, but make it meaningful. This tiny act wires your brain for agency. The Stoics knew discipline isn't about controlling the world, it's about mastering your first response to it. And that mastery begins the moment you open your eyes. Now let's talk about the second Stoic practice, one that might seem counterintuitive at first glance: negative visualization. While most self-help gurus preach positive thinking, the Stoics took a radically different approach. They called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Picture this: instead of avoiding thoughts about failure, loss, or hardship, You deliberately imagine them in vivid detail. Why? Because when you confront your deepest fears head-on, something remarkable happens. They lose their power to paralyze you. Epictetus put it bluntly, what upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about these things. Think about that for a moment. The anxiety you feel before a big presentation, the dread of losing a job, the worry about a loved one's health, none of these are inherently unbearable. It's the unknown that amplifies them. The Stoics recognized this and turned fear into a training ground. By mentally rehearsing worst-case scenarios, they stripped away the element of surprise and built an unshakable resilience. Here's the difference between how most people operate and how a Stoic prepares. Imagine two travelers packing for a trip. The first throws essentials into a bag, hoping for smooth flights and sunny weather. The second, the Stoic, packs a spare phone charger, checks the airline's cancellation policy, and mentally rehearses lost luggage scenarios. When delays happen, who stays calm? The one who already walked through the possibility. Try this today. Take a current worry, maybe an upcoming deadline, a difficult conversation, or financial uncertainty, and spend 5 minutes visualizing the worst possible outcome. Not to dwell in despair, but to ask, if this happened, how would I respond? What resources do I have? What could I learn? You'll notice something profound. The moment you stop resisting the possibility, you start seeing solutions. That's the gift of negative visualization. It transforms dread into preparation and gratitude. Because once you've faced the worst in your mind, everything else feels like a bonus. What if discomfort was your teacher, not your enemy? The Stoics had a radical belief. The path to true resilience wasn't found in avoiding hardship, but in willingly facing it. Marcus Aurelius put it perfectly, the obstacle is the way. Those 5 words hold the key to the third Stoic practice, voluntary discomfort. This isn't about punishing yourself, it's about breaking the illusion that comfort equals happiness. Think of it like strength training for your willpower. Every time you choose to endure a small hardship voluntarily, you're building the mental muscle to handle life's inevitable challenges with grace. Take cold showers. It sounds simple, even silly, until you try it. That first blast of icy water triggers every instinct to retreat to warmth. But when you stay under it, breathing deeply, you're doing more than just waking up your body. You're proving to yourself that discomfort won't break you. The Stoics called this ascesis, deliberate practice. Seneca slept on hard beds and wore thin robes in winter, not because he enjoyed suffering, but to remind himself, I am tougher than my circumstances. Here's the modern twist. Voluntary discomfort isn't about grand gestures of endurance. It's the small, daily choices that rewire your relationship with hardship. Skip the elevator and take the stairs. Turn off notifications for an hour. Have that difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Each time you lean into discomfort, you're training your brain to see obstacles not as threats, but as opportunities to grow. Try this today. Pick one tiny discomfort to embrace this week. Maybe it's waking up 15 minutes earlier without hitting snooze, or drinking your coffee black instead of sweetened. Notice how it feels not just in the moment, but in the quiet confidence that follows. Because when you stop running from discomfort, you start realizing something profound. You were always stronger than you thought. How many times have you wasted energy raging against things you couldn't change? A delayed flight, a rude comment, even the weather. That frustration is exactly what the Stoics aim to eliminate with their fourth practice, the dichotomy of control. Epictetus, the former slave-turned-philosopher, laid it out with stunning clarity. Some things are up to us and some things are not up to us. At first glance, it seems obvious until you realize how much of your mental energy is spent fighting the second category. Take traffic. You can't control the red lights, the construction zones, or the driver who cuts you off. But you can control whether you white-knuckle the steering wheel in fury or use the delay to listen to an audiobook. The Stoics weren't suggesting passive resignation. They were teaching strategic focus. Imagine your energy as a finite resource like money. Every time you invest it in things outside your control, you're essentially throwing cash into the wind. Here's where most people get tripped up. We confuse influence with control. You might influence a friend's decision, a boss's opinion, or a child's behavior, but ultimate control. Never. Trying to force those outcomes is like trying to hold water in your fists. The tighter you squeeze, the more slips through. The Stoic alternative. Pour that effort into what's truly yours, your judgments, your efforts, your reactions. Try this today. Grab a sheet of paper and draw 2 columns. Label one, within my control, the other, beyond my control. Now list 3 things you've been stressing over that belong in the second column. Maybe it's a family member's choices, societal problems, or past mistakes. Then, beside each, write 1 action you can take that aligns with the first column. For example, I can't control my teenager's mood, but I can control being present when they want to talk. This simple exercise does more than clarify, it liberates, because when you stop drowning in the uncontrollables, you suddenly have energy to swim toward what matters. There's a reason Marcus Aurelius' private journal survived 2,000 years not as a historical curiosity, but as one of the most powerful manuals on self-mastery ever written. The man who ruled the Roman Empire spent his nights not reviewing battle plans or political strategies, but examining his own mind with ruthless honesty. That's the essence of the 5th Stoic practice, journaling as a mirror for the soul. Unlike modern diaries filled with daily events or emotions, a Stoic journal serves one purpose: to strip away illusions and confront the truth of who you're becoming. Seneca described this nightly ritual with striking simplicity. When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said. Notice what's missing here. There's no self-congratulation, no venting, no dwelling on others' faults, just a clear-eyed audit of his own choices. The Stoics didn't journal to complain or reminisce, they wrote to course correct. Imagine holding up your actions each evening like a blacksmith inspecting a blade, searching for weak spots to temper in tomorrow's fire. Here's how this transforms discipline. Most people drift through days without reflection, repeating the same patterns while hoping for different results. Stoic journaling breaks that cycle. Picture a business leader jotting after a failed negotiation. Did I prepare thoroughly or rely on charm? When tensions rose, did I respond with reason or ego? That's not regret, it's recalibration. Aurelius filled 12 books with this practice, addressing himself with blunt counsel. Stop allowing your mind to be a slave to your body's urges. His meditations weren't lofty philosophy, they were battle plans for inner warfare. For modern practitioners, this doesn't require leather-bound volumes or hours of writing. Start tonight with 3 sentences. First, name 1 action aligned with your principles today. I listened without interrupting. Next, identify 1 lapse. I postponed the important task for trivial emails. Finally, 1 intention for tomorrow. I will tackle the hardest thing before breakfast. This takes 3 minutes but rewires your awareness. Over time, these brief entries become a compass, revealing patterns invisible in the moment. The magic of Stoic journaling lies in its immediacy. You're not documenting life, you're shaping it in real time. Every sentence is a chisel strike, carving away the excess until what remains is the person you choose to be. Why Stoics kept skulls on their desks wasn't about morbid fascination. It was the ultimate wake-up call. They called it Memento Mori, remember you must die. Far from being a dark obsession, this sixth Stoic practice was their secret weapon against procrastination, trivial distractions, and the illusion of endless time. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Imagine carrying that awareness not as a burden, but as a lens that brings life into razor-sharp focus. Consider how differently we'd act if we truly grasped that every conversation could be our last, every project our final contribution. Modern tech CEOs like Steve Jobs famously used this practice, asking himself daily, "If today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do?" When the answer was no too many days in a row, he knew it was time to change. That's the power of Memento Mori. It cuts through the noise of someday thinking and forces us to confront what actually matters. Here's the paradox. By facing death squarely, the Stoics found unparalleled vitality. Picture two artists, one who believes they have decades to perfect their craft, another who treats each brushstroke as if it might be their final one. Who creates with more urgency, more passion? The Stoics weren't suggesting we live in fear, but that we use mortality as a whetstone to sharpen our priorities. Try this tonight. When you turn off the lights, lie still for 30 seconds and truly consider, what if this were your last night, not to invoke dread, but to illuminate what you'd regret leaving undone? Would it be the inbox you didn't clear, or the conversation you didn't have, the project you delayed, or the kindness you withheld? This practice isn't about depressing realism, it's about liberating clarity. When later becomes uncertain, now becomes irresistible. The true gift of Memento Mori is this: it doesn't ask you to change your life. It simply asks, if you knew time was limited, which changes would you stop resisting? The answers are already within you. Death awareness just removes the excuses. Ever watched a sunset from a mountain peak or stared at the ocean until your worries seemed to dissolve into the horizon? That's the essence of the seventh Stoic practice, the view from above. Marcus Aurelius described it vividly. Take a view from above, look at the thousands of flocks and herds, the countless ceremonies, voyages, and the variations of creation. This wasn't poetic escapism. It was a deliberate mental exercise to shrink life's troubles down to their true size. Think of it like zooming out on a map. The argument that felt catastrophic this morning, the project deadline tightening your chest from 10,000 feet, they're barely visible. Astronauts call this the overview effect, that profound shift in perspective when seeing Earth from space. Borders vanish, conflict seems small. What remains is awe at our shared fragility. The Stoics achieved the same shift without leaving the ground, using imagination as their spacecraft. Here's how it works in practice. Right now, pick one stressor weighing on you: a conflict at work, a financial pressure, a personal regret. Now close your eyes and picture it from orbit. See your city as a speck of light, your country as a smudge on the globe. That problem, it's smaller than a single pixel. This isn't about dismissing your feelings, it's about contextualizing them. The bills still need paying, the conversation still needs having, but now you're handling them from a place of clarity, not claustrophobia. Modern psychology confirms what the Stoics knew. Perspective is analgesic. Surgeons use distancing techniques before high-stakes operations, imagining the procedure from a spectator's view to steady their hands. CEOs visualize quarterly setbacks against the backdrop of their company's decades-long journey. The view from above isn't avoidance, it's strategic detachment. When you see your life as part of a vast, unfolding tapestry, setbacks become threads, not tears. Try this tonight. Step outside and look at the stars for 2 minutes. As you gaze up, hear Marcus' reminder: The starry sky above is the same one your ancestors saw, and that future generations will marvel at long after you're gone. Feel the weight of that continuity. Whatever's troubling you right now has existed in some form for centuries, and will again. The difference, you get to choose whether it shrinks you or strengthens you. That's the power of cosmic awareness. It doesn't erase problems, but reveals your capacity to rise above them. Remember the story of Odysseus lashing himself to his ship's mast to resist the siren's song. That wasn't just mythic drama, it was the ultimate precommitment device, and the Stoics would have applauded his foresight. 2,000 years later, Epictetus echoed the same strategy with brutal clarity. Decide now what you will not even consider later. That's the eighth Stoic practice in action, not relying on willpower in the moment, but engineering your environment to make virtue the only option. Think about how often we betray our best intentions. We vow to avoid junk food, then find our hands in the chip bag. We promise an early bedtime, only to binge one more episode. The Stoics recognized this weakness not as moral failure, but as human nature. Their solution removed the choice altogether. Like Odysseus binding his own hands, they created systems where discipline wasn't optional. It was inevitable. Modern psychology confirms what ancient wisdom knew: decision fatigue is real. Every time you debate whether to scroll social media or work out, you drain mental energy better spent on meaningful action. That's why precommitment works. Picture a writer disabling her Wi-Fi router before drafting chapters, or a recovering smoker preparing for a year's gym membership. These aren't restrictions, they're liberations from constant negotiation with temptation. Here's the Stoic twist: precommitment isn't about punishment, but alignment. When Seneca advised his students to live as if your every action might become a universal law, he was urging them to build habits so consistent they'd withstand any storm of emotion. Today's version: apps that lock you out of distracting websites after 30 minutes, or scheduling morning workouts with a friend who'll charge you $20 for flaking. These are modern-day masked ropes tools that honor your long-term goals more than your momentary whims. Try this today. Choose one behavior you want to change and engineer a precommitment around it. If procrastination plagues you, email your boss a deadline before it's due. If impulse spending stings, freeze your credit cards in a block of ice. Like Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you must to become it. Every great civilization was built on constraints. Bridges need pillars, arches need keystones. Your character is no different. Bind yourself to excellence now, and when temptation sings later, you'll sail right past it. What if every setback, every disappointment, every twist of fate wasn't just something to endure, but something to embrace with open arms? That's the radical heart of the ninth Stoic practice, Amor Fati, the unconditional love of one's fate. Nietzsche, who studied Stoicism deeply, called it his formula for greatness, not merely accepting what happens, but celebrating it as if you'd chosen it yourself. Imagine standing in the rain and smiling because you get to feel the water on your skin, or losing a job and seeing it as the universe clearing space for something better. That's Amor Fati in action, not passive resignation, but active partnership with life itself. Epictetus laid the groundwork centuries earlier. Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happen the way it happens. At first, that sounds like surrender until you realize it's the opposite. When you stop wasting energy fighting reality, you free up boundless reserves to work with it. Picture two carpenters. One curses the knotty wood, the other sees its unique grain as inspiration. Both face the same material, only one creates a masterpiece. History brims with Amor Fati in action. Beethoven didn't just cope with deafness, he rewrote music itself to accommodate his fading hearing. Mandela turned prison into a classroom, emerging not with bitterness, but with a vision that transformed a nation. These weren't superhumans, they were practitioners of a mindset available to anyone. The key, asking one transformative question: how could this be the perfect teacher for who I'm becoming? Here's how to practice it today. Take a current struggle, maybe a strained relationship, a financial pinch, or a health challenge. Now, write down 3 ways it's forcing you to grow. Lost a client, that's pushing you to refine your pitch. Dealing with criticism, it's revealing where your confidence needs roots. Even physical pain can teach patience or gratitude for good days. This isn't toxic positivity, it's alchemy turning leaden moments into golden wisdom. The magic of Amor Fati lies in its paradox. By fully accepting what is, you gain the power to shape what's next. Like a sailor who stops cursing the wind and learns to adjust the sails, you stop seeing life as something that happens to you and start experiencing it as something happening for you. Try it this week. Each time frustration arises, whisper Amor Fati like a mantra. Watch how quickly resistance melts into curiosity and obstacles become invitations. Not everything you think is true. That simple statement holds the key to the 10th Stoic practice, the discipline of Assent. Imagine your mind as a courtroom where every thought, every impression must present its case before gaining your belief. Epictetus described this process with surgical precision. Don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. Just say to it, hold on a moment, let me see who you are and what you represent. Think about the last time you scrolled through social media and felt a surge of anger at a headline or comment. That immediate reaction wasn't based on facts, it was your mind accepting an impression as truth without cross-examination. The Stoics called these raw impressions phantasiae, mental images that demand our judgment before we should assent to them. In an age of algorithmic outrage and viral misinformation, this ancient practice isn't just philosophical, it's survival skills for your attention. Here's why this matters. Every emotional reaction you have is preceded by a thought you've approved, often unconsciously. When someone cuts you off in traffic, your rage isn't caused by their actions, it's fueled by your unchecked assumption that they disrespected you. The discipline of Assent interrupts this chain. Picture a chef tasting every ingredient before adding it to the pot. That's how Stoics treat thoughts. Try this today. Install a 5-second pause between stimulus and response. Before replying to that charged email, before internalizing a criticism, even before believing your own self-doubt, stop. Ask Epictetus 3 questions. Is this within my control? Is this true? Is this useful? Like a bouncer at the door of your mind, this habit filters out mental trespassers. Modern psychology calls this metacognition, thinking about thinking. The Stoics built an entire discipline around it. When you master Assent, you don't just avoid unnecessary distress, you reclaim sovereignty over your inner world. Those flashing notifications, breaking news alerts, and petty grievances, they're all impressions knocking at your door. You get to decide which ones deserve an answer. How emperors stayed calm in crisis wasn't through secret potions or divine intervention. It came down to something far simpler, the rhythm of their own breath. Marcus Aurelius, facing barbarian invasions and political betrayals, wrote in his private journal, "Take a deep breath, return to the present. Nothing is as chaotic as it seems." That's the essence of the 11th Stoic practice, Stoic breathing. A tool so powerful, modern warriors still use it in life or death situations today. Picture a Roman general on a battlefield, his army outnumbered, the air thick with screams and clashing steel. His secret weapon, a deliberate pause to inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4. This wasn't just calming, it was strategic. By mastering his breath, he mastered his mind, turning panic into precision. Fast forward 2 millennia, and Navy SEAL employ nearly identical techniques. Their tactical breathing method, taught in hellish training exercises, is proven to lower heart rates, sharpen focus, and override the amygdala's fear response. The Stoics didn't have neuroscience, but they understood what we now confirm. Breath is the remote control for your nervous system. Here's why this works. When stress hits, your body defaults to shallow, rapid breaths, a relic of our fight or flight wiring. But deep, measured breathing triggers the vagus nerve, flipping the switch back to calm. The Stoics called this prosouch attention to the present moment through bodily awareness. Seneca described it as anchoring the storm-tossed mind to the steady rhythm of life itself. Try this now. Place one hand on your chest, the other on your belly. Inhale deeply for 4 seconds, feeling your diaphragm expand. Hold for 4. Exhale slowly for 4. Repeat 3 times. Notice how your shoulders drop, your thoughts clear. That's not relaxation, that's reclaiming control. Ancient gladiators used this before entering the arena. CEOs use it before high-stakes meetings. The circumstances change, but the principle remains. When you can't control the chaos around you, command the calm within you. For Marcus, this wasn't just a crisis tool, it was daily maintenance. He wrote, "The breath that sustains me is the same that connects me to the cosmos. Every inhale a reminder of life's fragility, every exhale a release of what doesn't serve you." Modern life bombards us with endless stimuli, but the solution is always as close as your next breath. Whether you're facing a traffic jam or a personal loss, the air in your lungs is the first and last word in self-mastery. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius faced assassination plots, military defeats, and a devastating plague, yet his private writings reveal a mind as steady as a mountain in a storm. His secret, what he called the inner citadel, an unassailable fortress within the soul where no external chaos could penetrate. Picture this: while the world burns around you, there's a quiet chamber in your mind where you remain untouched by fear, judgment, or circumstance. That's not fantasy, it's the 12th Stoic practice, and it's built not of stone but of unshakable principles. Marcus described it vividly: retreat into your own mind. No retreat offers more quiet or relaxation than that of your own soul. Notice the word retreat. This wasn't about hiding from reality, but about creating an inner sanctuary so strong you could engage fully with the world without being consumed by it. Modern psychology echoes this with the concept of the observing self, that part of you that can watch your own thoughts like clouds passing without being carried away by them. Think of CEOs navigating corporate scandals. The ones who emerge with their reputations intact aren't those who never faced crises, but those who had clearly defined values long before the storm hit. When Johnson & Johnson recalled 31 million bottles of Tylenol in 1982 due to tampering, their immediate, principle-driven response, prioritizing public safety over profits, came from an inner citadel built on integrity. No panic, no hesitation, just alignment with what they knew to be right. Here's how to construct yours. Tonight, grab a notebook and answer one question: what 3 principles would I defend at any cost? Not goals like get promoted or lose weight, but timeless values: honesty, courage, compassion. Write them as commandments. I will speak truth even when it's inconvenient. I will treat others with dignity regardless of their status. These become your citadel's walls when chaos comes, and it will. You won't need to decide how to act. You'll simply consult what's already written in your soul's architecture. The brilliance of this practice lies in its flexibility. Your citadel isn't a prison, it's a foundation. A jazz musician improvises freely because she's mastered the scales. A Stoic engages with life's unpredictability because they've mastered their non-negotiables. External events may rattle the windows, but they'll never breach the core. That's true power, not controlling the world, but ensuring it can't control you. Why Stoics periodically lived poor wasn't about punishment or virtue signaling. It was a radical exercise in proving to themselves that happiness wasn't tied to external comforts. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, would deliberately wear shabby clothes, eat simple meals, and sleep on the floor for days at a time. His reasoning cuts through 2,000 years of consumer conditioning. Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition I feared?" That question holds the essence of the 13th Stoic practice, poverty training. It's not about romanticizing deprivation, but about dismantling the illusion that abundance equals freedom. Consider how differently we'd approach life if we knew, not just believed, but knew we could thrive without the trappings of modern comfort. The Stoics called this autarkeia, self-sufficiency rooted not in what you own, but in what you can do without. Picture two travelers, one burdened by overstuffed luggage, the other moving freely with just a backpack. Poverty training is that moment when you realize most of what you're carrying isn't sustenance, it's fear in material form. Modern minimalism movements echo this ancient wisdom. When tech CEOs wear the same outfit daily or billionaires like Warren Buffett live in modest homes, they're not being frugal, they're practicing cognitive liberation. Every possession you don't need is a decision you won't have to make, a worry you won't have to carry. The Swedish call this lagom, just enough. The Japanese practice motanai, the regret of waste. But the Stoics took it further. They didn't just minimize clutter, they actively sought discomfort to prove it couldn't break them. Here's how to start. Pick one luxury you consider essential. Maybe your morning latte, premium streaming services, or that fourth pair of sneakers. For 1 month, let it go. Not with resentment, but with curiosity. What part of me believed this was necessary? Notice the space that opens not just in your closet or budget, but in your mind. Seneca put it bluntly, rich is the person who is a master of wealth. Poor is the one who is enslaved to it. When you voluntarily step away from comfort, you're not losing privileges, you're gaining immunity. Immunity to fear, to advertising's whispers, to the gnawing sense that you're never quite enough as you are. This practice reveals a paradoxical truth. The less you need to be happy, the more powerful you become. Like a tree that learns to grow deep roots during drought, you'll find resources within yourself that no recession can deplete, no circumstance can take. Try it today. Skip that takeout meal and cook simply. Wear your oldest clothes with pride. You'll discover what the Stoics knew. Real wealth isn't measured in what you accumulate, but in what you can joyfully release. There's a fraction of a second between what happens to you and how you react, a sliver of time so thin, most people miss it entirely. Yet within that space lies the essence of the 14th Stoic practice, the Stoic pause. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, distilled this ancient wisdom into a modern revelation. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. The Stoics didn't just understand this concept, they weaponized it. Epictetus put it bluntly, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Think about the last time someone cut you off in traffic. Your hands tightened on the wheel, your pulse spiked, but right before the curse left your lips, there was a moment. A fleeting opportunity to ask, will this reaction serve me? That's the Stoic pause in action. It's the mental equivalent of slamming the brakes before a collision. Modern neuroscience confirms what the Stoics intuited. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, triggers reactions in milliseconds, but the prefrontal cortex, your rational commander, needs just a few extra seconds to intervene. Those seconds are where discipline is born. Consider the angry email draft phenomenon. You've probably typed out a fiery response to a colleague's thoughtless comment, fingers flying across the keyboard, only to close the tab unsent. That unfinished draft is proof of your innate ability to pause. The Stoics would have celebrated that moment of restraint not as suppression, but as sovereignty. Seneca wrote letters brimming with passion, then stored them for days before sending, letting time sand down their sharp edges. Here's how to train this muscle today. Set 3 alarms tomorrow, label them pause points. When each chimes, freeze mid-action. Maybe you're about to criticize a coworker's idea or reflexively grab your phone during a lull. In that frozen second, ask Epictetus' trio of questions. Is this necessary? Is this true? Is this kind? You're not stopping reactions, you're choosing them. Like a sculptor stepping back to assess the marble before each chisel strike, you'll start shaping your behavior with intention rather than impulse. The magic of this practice reveals itself gradually. At first, you'll catch reactions after they've escaped, like noticing you've bitten your nails only when they're raw. But with time, that pause widens. Conversations become dialogues instead of debates. Frustrations transform into curiosities. And one day, you'll realize the greatest freedom isn't controlling what life throws at you, it's mastering what you throw back. What people think of you is none of your business. That blunt statement slices through centuries of social conditioning to reveal the 15th Stoic practice: building character before chasing reputation. While modern culture obsesses over likes, followers, and public perception, the Stoics measured worth by an entirely different metric: the alignment between one's actions and inner principles. Epictetus put it starkly: if anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, don't make excuses about what is said, but answer, he must not know my other faults, or he would not have mentioned only these. That's not false humility, it's liberation from the exhausting game of image management. Consider the artist who paints not for gallery acclaim, but because creation itself feels like breathing. Or the entrepreneur who turns down a lucrative deal because it conflicts with her ethics, even when no one would have known. These aren't just moral choices, they're acts of defiance against a world that confuses visibility with value. The Stoics drew a clear line between prosopon, the masks we wear for others, and ethos, the core self we answer to in private. Reputation, they argued, is like smoke constantly shifting, impossible to grasp. Character is the fire that produces it, steady, enduring, and entirely within your control. History's most enduring figures understood this dichotomy. Van Gogh sold barely any paintings during his lifetime, yet wrote to his brother Theo, "I am seeking, I am striving, I am in it with all my heart." Contrast that with today's influencers chasing viral moments at any cost. The difference isn't talent or opportunity, it's the compass they follow. One points inward to integrity, the other outward to applause. This practice doesn't mean ignoring feedback or living recklessly. It means filtering opinions through a single question. Does this help me grow wiser, kinder, stronger? If not, it's mental clutter. Try this today. Grab a notebook and list 3 things you'd do if absolutely no one would judge you. Maybe it's singing openly, leaving a toxic relationship, or pursuing that impractical passion. Now circle one and take a tiny step toward it this week. Not to broadcast on social media, but to whisper to yourself, "This is who I am," when the audience disappears. The Stoics knew a secret. When you stop performing for invisible critics, you discover talents and joys no standing ovation could match. The irony: Those who focus relentlessly on character often earn the deepest respect precisely because they aren't trying to. Like a tree growing solid in private before bearing fruit in public, your unshakable core becomes visible not through posturing, but through the quiet consistency of your choices. That's the alchemy of this practice. By releasing concern for reputation, you build one worth having. In 1784, a failed playwright turned his obsession with steam engines into the invention that would power the Industrial Revolution because no theater would stage his work. James Watt didn't just overcome rejection, he used it as fuel to redirect his genius. That's the essence of the 16th Stoic practice. The obstacle is the way. Marcus Aurelius captured it in one piercing metaphor. The blazing fire makes flames and brightness out of everything thrown into it. What if every setback in your life isn't a roadblock, but raw material waiting for your alchemy? This isn't about naive optimism. The Stoics weren't suggesting you smile through hardship, they were teaching strategic reinterpretation. When the Roman general Fabius faced Hannibal's unstoppable army, he didn't meet force with force. He turned his apparent weakness, smaller troops, into a strength, harassing supply lines and letting the enemy's own arrogance exhaust them. History remembers this as the Fabian strategy, but it was pure Stoic physics. Every action creates an equal and opposite opportunity. Modern entrepreneurs live this principle daily. Airbnb's founders couldn't pay rent in 2007, so they rented air mattresses in their apartment during a conference when hotels were full. That desperate pivot became a $93 billion company. Notice the pattern. The obstacle, rejection, bankruptcy, lack of resources didn't disappear. It became the pivot point for something no one could have planned linearly. Here's how to practice this today. Grab a pen and circle one current frustration, a delayed project, a skeptical client, even a personal limitation. Now write 3 ways it's secretly serving you. Stuck in traffic, that's forced reflection time. Facing budget cuts, they're pruning distractions. The Stoics called this perceptual transformation, and neuroscience confirms its power. When you label a stressor as a challenge instead of a threat, your brain shifts from survival mode to creative problem solving. Marcus left us the ultimate question. What stands in the way becomes the way, not by magic, but because barriers force us to develop skills we'd otherwise neglect. A river doesn't complain about boulders, it flows around them, carving canyons in the process. Your obstacles aren't exceptions to your path, they're the terrain itself. The next time you hit resistance, hear it whispering, this isn't stopping you, it's shaping you. Imagine waking up every morning with a bank account that automatically deducts 24 gold coins, 1 for each hour, and whatever you don't spend wisely vanishes forever. That's how the Stoics viewed time, not as an endless resource, but as the ultimate non-renewable currency. Seneca, in his famous letter on the shortness of life, delivered a wake-up call that still echoes today. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. The 17th Stoic practice transforms this urgency into action, not through frantic hustle, but through ruthless prioritization of what truly deserves your limited coins. Warren Buffett's 5-25 rule embodies this perfectly. He once told his pilot to list his top 25 career goals, then circle only the 5 most vital, and avoid the rest at all costs. Why? Because the 20 uncircled items weren't just distractions, they were thieves masquerading as opportunities. The Stoics would have nodded in approval. They didn't just manage time, they sanctified it, asking with each sunrise, if this were my last day, would I trade an hour of it for mindless scrolling, petty arguments, or tasks that shrink my spirit? Consider how differently we'd allocate our days if we internalized this. The average person spends 4 years of their life looking at a phone screen. 4 years, now picture a Stoic alternative, not austerity, but intentionality. A CEO might decline a quick coffee meeting that derails deep work. A parent might choose bedtime stories over overtime emails. These aren't sacrifices, they're investments in the only account that truly compounds, a life well lived. Here's the pivot point: Stoic time management isn't about doing more, it's about meaning more. Marcus Aurelius journaled at night not to tally productivity, but to ask, did I live today in alignment with my principles? Modern tools like time blocking or the Eisenhower matrix help, but they're just scaffolding. The foundation is Memento Mori, the awareness that every later is a gamble. Seneca wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." We postpone passions for pensions, adventures for approvals, as if death politely checks our calendars. Try this tonight. Open your phone's screen time report. What single activity drains the most coins with the least return? Maybe it's newsfeeds stoking outrage or group chats buzzing with trivialities. Now design one Stoic intervention. If YouTube autoplay steals your evenings, install an extension that requires manual input for each new video. If meetings balloon uselessly, set a hard stop at 50 minutes. These aren't restrictions, they're declarations that your time belongs to you, not to algorithms or others' agendas. The irony: those who treat time as precious often experience it as expansive. Like a traveler who wanders slowly but sees deeply, they extract more richness from a single hour than others do from a distracted week. When you start spending your coins like a Stoic, with deliberate, unapologetic purpose, you'll discover what Seneca meant. Life is long enough if you know how to use it. Not by adding years to your life, but by adding life to your years. Why Stoics added the phrase, fate permitting, to every goal wasn't about superstition. It was about wielding two kinds of power simultaneously: fierce intention and radical surrender. Epictetus framed it with sailor's wisdom. You can set sail whenever you wish, but the final arrival is never guaranteed. That's the 18th Stoic practice, the reserve clause, a mental footnote appended to every plan that whispers, "I'll give my all, but hold nothing hostage to outcomes." Modern minds might mistake this for half-hearted commitment, but the Stoics knew better. It's the difference between a clenched fist that tires and an open hand that endures. Picture an Olympic sprinter visualizing gold while also repeating, "If my body permits, if no false start occurs, if the judges rule fairly." This isn't doubt, it's psychological armor. When British rower Catherine Granger trained for 5 Olympics before finally winning gold in London 2012, she embodied this duality. Early defeats could have crushed her, but her journals revealed Stoic resilience. "I'll row until my arms give out unless the river freezes first." By acknowledging variables beyond her control, she freed herself to focus entirely on what she could command: her discipline, her technique, her recovery. Here's the paradox the reserve clause unlocks. Planning without attachment isn't weakness, it's anti-fragility. A business owner might strategize a product launch while muttering if markets remain stable, if suppliers deliver. This mental habit does something remarkable. It shifts focus from guarantees to preparation. NASA engineers live this principle daily. They designed spacecraft for Mars landings knowing atmospheric conditions could change in an instant. Their brilliance lies in meticulous planning paired with humble acceptance of cosmic variables. Try this today. Take one current goal, a promotion, a fitness target, a creative project, and rewrite it with the reserve clause. "I'll complete the manuscript by December, health and inspiration permitting." Feel how it loosens the grip of desperation while sharpening commitment to daily effort. The Stoics weren't teaching passivity, they were hacking human psychology. When you detach from rigid outcomes, you're not abandoning ambition, you're making it unbreakable. Epictetus left us the ultimate test. Would you still pursue this if Zeus himself whispered it might not happen? If the answer is yes, you found the work worth doing regardless. That's the secret the reserve clause guards, not whether you reach the mountaintop, but who you become on the climb. Ever notice how stepping back from a painting reveals details invisible up close? That's the essence of the 19th Stoic practice, cognitive distancing, the art of observing your own thoughts as if they belong to someone else. Marcus Aurelius described this mental shift with poetic precision. You can remove yourself from the current of thoughts whenever you wish, like a swimmer reaching the riverbank to watch the water rush by. This isn't detachment from reality, it's engagement at a higher level. Modern therapists call it metacognition, the Stoics called it wisdom. Think of it like becoming your own therapist. When anxiety whispers you'll fail, cognitive distancing asks, would I say that to a struggling friend? When resentment simmers over a slight, it steps in. Is this story I'm telling factual or fueled by ego? The power lies in that tiny gap between experiencing a thought and believing it. A gap most people never realize exists. Studies reveal that third-person self-talk. Why is James feeling this way? Reduces emotional intensity faster than first-person. Why am I feeling this way? The Stoics were pioneers of this technique 2 millennia before psychology labs confirmed its benefits. Consider a surgeon prepping for a complex operation. If she's flooded with "what if I make a mistake?" her hands might shake. But if she observes that thought like a weather pattern, interesting how my mind is generating worst-case scenarios, she maintains steady focus. That's cognitive distancing in action, not suppressing emotions, but seeing them as passing mental events rather than absolute truths. Marcus practiced this daily, addressing himself in his journal as you instead of I, creating instant perspective. When you wake up reluctant to rise, remember your purpose is to serve mankind. Here's how to train this skill today. Pick a current worry. Maybe my boss doesn't respect me. Now, describe it like an anthropologist studying a foreign culture. The subject believes his supervisor undervalues his contributions, citing 3 instances over 6 months where praise was withheld. Feel how the emotional charge dulls. That space you've created is where rational responses grow. The Stoics knew what modern science confirms. We can't control the first thought that pops up, but we can choose whether to water it or let it wither. This practice shines brightest in conflicts. Next time someone provokes you, imagine watching the interaction from a balcony above. Notice body language, tone, the dance of egos, yours included. Epictetus offered the ultimate test. If someone handed you a cup of water with their finger dipped in it, would you refuse to drink? Of course not. Then why let petty comments pollute your peace? Cognitive distancing turns heated moments into live case studies, where you're both participant and wise observer. The result isn't indifference, it's the clarity to respond instead of react. Try this tonight. Journal about a frustration using only third-person narration. David felt annoyed when his partner forgot to run the dishwasher. He noticed his jaw tightening and made a conscious choice to breathe deeply. That slight shift from "I'm furious" to "he noticed anger arising" changes everything. Like a blacksmith cooling hot metal to shape it, you're tempering raw emotions into tools for growth. The Stoics didn't just preach this, they proved it in dungeons and throne rooms. Now it's your turn to watch the river from the bank and decide which thoughts deserve to carry you forward. How Stoics walked their talk wasn't through grand speeches or lofty ideals. It was in the quiet consistency of their daily actions. Epictetus, the philosopher who lived as a slave before teaching emperors, cut through all pretense with one razor-sharp question. What's the point of nodding along to wise words if your hands remain idle? That's the heart of the 20th Stoic practice, the discipline of action, where virtue isn't measured by what you believe, but by what you do when no one's watching. Consider the modern parallel of signing petitions for social change but never volunteering, or applauding environmental talks while ignoring your own wastefulness. The Stoics called this akrasia, the gap between knowing and doing that erodes integrity. Marcus Aurelius confronted it in his journal. Don't say you've been taught principles. Show them in your sinews. Ancient philosophy classrooms weren't lecture halls, they were training grounds where students practiced poverty, endured mock insults, and performed menial labor to hardwire ethics into muscle memory. Here's where most self-improvement fails. It mistakes intention for transformation. You can read every book on courage, but until you speak up in that tense meeting, it's just mental decoration. Picture a nurse who studies compassion theory yet rushes past a weeping patient. That's the disconnect Stoic action cures. When Seneca advised his students to live as if your every choice became universal law, he wasn't demanding perfection. He was insisting that small, consistent acts shape character far more than sporadic grand gestures. Try this today. Pick one virtue you admire, maybe patience, generosity, or diligence, and engineer a single concrete expression of it. Hold the door for someone struggling with packages. Listen fully to a colleague without mentally drafting your response. These aren't just good deeds, they're rehearsals for the person you're becoming. Epictetus warned, "You're not a philosopher just because you can discuss Plato. You're a philosopher when your choices align with reason." The brilliance of this practice lies in its immediacy. Virtue isn't some distant summit, it's the next step you take. Like a sculptor who reveals the statue by chipping away excess stone, each intentional action chips away at the gap between who you are and who you aspire to be. Start small, but start today, because the Stoics knew a truth we often forget. Your life isn't shaped by the philosophy you quote, but by the choices you live. What if the admiration of strangers was secretly draining your strength? The 21st Stoic practice cuts straight to the heart of modern obsession with visibility, contempt for fame. Not as bitter cynicism, but as clear-eyed recognition that applause is a fickle compass. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, scribbled this midnight reminder: how quickly all things disappear, their bodies into the universe, their memories into time. And what is fame? A fleeting echo in mouths that will soon be dust. He wasn't being morbid, he was breaking the spell that equates recognition with worth. History's most enduring figures often worked in shadows. Consider the anonymous donors who fund cancer research without press releases, or the teachers who transform lives in classrooms no camera ever visits. The Stoics called this lathe biosas, live unnoticed, not as a rejection of impact, but as insulation against the corrupting chase for validation. When Seneca advised his students to write for one reader, not the crowd, he wasn't discouraging excellence, he was protecting it from the distorting gravity of public opinion. Here's the modern trap: social media algorithms reward performance, not substance. A chef obsessing over Instagram aesthetics starts plating for cameras, not palettes. A musician tailoring songs for viral potential sacrifices authenticity for clicks. The Stoic alternative: judge your work by a single standard. Would this still matter if no one praised it? That's how you separate craft from costume. Try this today. Perform one act of kindness without documenting it. Pay for a stranger's coffee and walk away. Leave a generous tip with no note. Feel that quiet thrill. That's the pulse of genuine virtue, untethered from spectators. Marcus knew this truth. The applause of the many is as meaningless as the clattering of hooves on cobblestones. Real fulfillment grows in the soil of intrinsic motivation, not the brittle concrete of external validation. The paradox, those indifferent to fame often earn the deepest respect precisely because they aren't courting it. Like a tree growing strong in a hidden valley, their roots dig deep where no one sees. Your best work deserves that same purity of purpose, unshaped by cheers, unshaken by silence. Diogenes lived in a barrel not because he was poor, but because he was free. When Alexander the Great asked what he could do for the famous philosopher, Diogenes simply replied, "Step aside, you're blocking my sunlight." That moment captures the essence of the 22nd Stoic practice, the art of subtraction. It's not about deprivation, but about discovering how much we've been carrying that was never ours to bear. Seneca put it bluntly, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Strip away the unnecessary and you'll find the space to breathe. Think about your phone's storage. When it's near full capacity, every app slows to a crawl. Your mind works the same way. The constant pings of notifications, the mental clutter of unfinished tasks, the weight of possessions you never use, they're all background processes draining your focus. Modern research reveals what the Stoics knew intuitively. A Princeton neuroscience study found physical clutter reduces your ability to concentrate, literally overloading your cognitive capacity. Digital detoxes aren't just trendy, they're neurological resets. When you silence the noise, you don't just hear yourself think, you remember what matters. Consider the Japanese practice of misogi purification by removing. Shinto shrines are rebuilt every 20 years on adjacent plots, forcing priests to reconsider what's truly essential. In Silicon Valley, tech leaders like Jack Dorsey wear the same outfit daily not as a fashion statement, but as a cognitive shortcut. Every decision you don't have to make preserves mental energy for what counts. The Stoics took this further. They didn't just minimize distractions, they systematically eliminated anything that didn't serve virtue or purpose. Here's the modern paradox: we chase convenience but sacrifice freedom. That gym membership you never use isn't just wasting money, it's whispering guilt every time you see the charge. The overflowing closet doesn't just take up space, it demands you choose between versions of yourself you've outgrown. Subtraction isn't loss, it's the recovery of attention, time, and peace. Seneca observed, "It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the one who craves more." Try this today. Walk through your home with a trash bag. Find one possession that hasn't served you in 6 months, maybe that juicer gathering dust or the stack of unread magazines. Hold it and ask Diogenes' question. Does this make me freer or just busier? Donate it, sell it, or recycle it. Feel that lightness. That's not just empty space, it's room for your best self to expand. The Stoics knew a secret. You don't find freedom by adding, you uncover it by stripping away everything that was never you to begin with. How Cotto stood in storms, not bracing against the wind, but letting it pass through him as if his bones were marble and his skin mere cloth. That image captures the 23rd Stoic practice, mastering body language as the physical echo of inner discipline. When Julius Caesar's troops surrounded Utica, threatening to raze the city, Cotto the Younger didn't pace or wring his hands. He reclined in his library, reading Plato's Phaedo on the immortality of the soul, his posture so unbroken that even his enemies whispered of his unconquerable spirit. The Stoics knew what modern science confirms. How you carry yourself doesn't just reflect your state, it determines it. Epictetus put it plainly, don't let your slumped shoulders tell a story your soul hasn't approved. Think of a soldier standing inspection chin level, spine aligned, breath steady, even as adrenaline floods his veins. That bearing isn't just for show, it's a physiological hack. Harvard researchers found that holding power poses for just 2 minutes spikes testosterone, the confidence hormone, by 20% and drops cortisol, the stress hormone, by 15%. The Stoics anticipated this by millennia, training students to sit, stand, and walk as if wearing an invisible crown, not from arrogance, but because dignity is a discipline. Consider the contrast between two executives delivering bad news. One fidgets, avoids eye contact, his voice wavering like a candle in wind. The other, though delivering the same message, keeps her hands still, meets each gaze, and speaks from her diaphragm. The words may be identical, but the body transforms their impact. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, writing, "Let no motion betray what the soul must conceal." He ruled Rome during plague and war, yet portraits show his brow unfurrowed, not because he lacked fear, but because he knew composure was the first domino in the chain of command. Here's how to embody this today. Notice your posture right now. Are your shoulders hunched forward like you're bracing for a blow? Straighten them deliberately, as if drawing a sword from its scabbard. Feel the shift. That's not just physical adjustment, it's neurological rebellion against chaos. Navy SEAL use this tactic before missions. By controlling their breath and stance, they override panic circuitry. You don't need a battlefield to benefit. Next time stress mounts before a difficult call, during a tense meeting, anchor yourself with Stoic posture. Plant your feet as if rooted to the earth, relax your jaw, and let your hands rest like weights rather than weapons. The magic lies in reciprocity. Just as calm thoughts steady the body, a steady body quiets the mind. Try it tonight. Walk home not with the shuffling gait of fatigue, but with the measured stride of someone carrying something precious because you are. Your dignity isn't situational, it's structural. Like Cato in the storm, you'll discover the secret the Stoics etched into their very bones. When you refuse to collapse physically, you become psychologically unbreakable. As the sun dipped below the rooftops of ancient Rome, Seneca would light a single lamp and perform a ritual more valuable than any battlefield victory or political triumph, the nightly examination of his soul. This 24th Stoic practice transforms ordinary bedtime into a forge for wisdom, where the day's raw experiences are hammered into lasting insight. Unlike modern wind-down routines of scrolling and distraction, the evening review was a deliberate audit of living, compressed into 3 piercing questions. Where did I stray from reason? Where did I act with courage? What could I do better tomorrow? These weren't guilt trips or ego strokes, they were whetstones for sharpening tomorrow's character. Consider how differently we'd sleep if we ended each day like a Stoic. Most people collapse into bed replaying grievances or ticking mental to-do lists, but Seneca's method cuts deeper. His letters reveal the rigor. The spirit must be called to account daily. What weakness did you cure today? What vice resist? In what aspect are you better? Picture a blacksmith inspecting his tools, not to lament their nicks, but to ensure they'll hold fast in tomorrow's fire. Modern psychology validates this. Studies show that structured reflection boosts learning by 23% compared to passive experience. Athletes review game footage. CEOs analyze quarterly reports, yet few apply this rigor to their own growth. Here's how to practice it tonight. First, ask, where did my actions misalign with my values? Not what went wrong, but where did I choose convenience over courage? Maybe you laughed at a cruel joke to fit in or postponed a hard conversation. No self-flagellation, just clear-eyed acknowledgement. Next, what moment revealed my strength? Stoics celebrated progress as fervently as they corrected faults. Did you listen instead of interrupting? Choose patience in frustration. These victories, however small, compound. Finally, what single change would make tomorrow meaningful? Not a task, a transformation. I'll speak less and listen more. Beats finish the presentation. Modern parallels abound. Surgeons conduct morbidity and mortality conferences to dissect errors without shame. Silicon Valley teams hold stop/start/continue retrospectives. The Stoic twist: this isn't about productivity, it's about integrity. Your nightly review isn't a performance evaluation, it's a conversation with your highest self. Try it tonight with pen and paper, not your phone's glare. Write 3 sentences, no more. Feel the difference between drifting into sleep and arriving there deliberately. The day's lessons sealed like letters to your future self. Seneca left a clue to why this works. We are tight-fisted with property and money, yet think too little of wasting time, the one thing about which we should all be the toughest misers. The evening review turns time from a thief into an ally. Each examined day is a brick in the foundation of the person you're becoming, not by chance but by choice. What gossip teaches us isn't just about others, it's a mirror reflecting how easily our attention scatters. The 25th Stoic practice, indifference to trivia, turns that mirror into a tool for reclaiming focus. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly: if you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid when it comes to the barking of dogs. He wasn't advising ignorance but radical discernment, the kind that lets you walk past 100 distractions to grasp the one thing that matters. Consider how modern CEOs like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates structure their days. They don't start mornings scrolling news feeds or reacting to market chatter. Buffett reads financial reports in silence. Gates think weeks in a secluded cabin. Their secret isn't superior intelligence, it's ruthless elimination of mental static. The Stoics called this prosoph, the discipline of guarding attention like a fortress gate. Every ounce of energy spent on trivialities, celebrity scandals, office politics, viral outrage is stolen from the work that could define your legacy. Think of your mind as a spotlight in a crowded theater. Most people swing it wildly, illuminating whatever shouts loudest: clickbait headlines, social media drama, petty grievances. The Stoic trains that beam with precision. When the Roman senator Cato was heckled in the forum, he didn't engage. He kept walking, explaining later, "Would you stop to swat every fly that buzzes near you?" Modern research validates this approach. A University of California study found that regaining focus after an interruption takes 23 minutes on average. The cost of trivia isn't just time, it's the cognitive toll of constant context switching. Here's the pivot: indifference to trivia isn't cold detachment, it's strategic warmth. A doctor tuning out cafeteria gossip to review a patient's chart isn't being antisocial, she's honoring her oath. A writer disabling Wi-Fi to draft a novel isn't missing out, he's building something that outlasts trending topics. Marcus framed it as a trade. You can't have both the fruits of focused labor and the crumbs of distraction. Try this today. Grab your phone and check screen time. What single app or habit devours attention while offering nothing in return? Maybe it's refreshing news sites or group chats spiraling into complaints. Now, hear Epictetus' challenge. If you wouldn't invite these thoughts into your home, why welcome them into your mind? Delete one app, mute one channel, or set one boundary, not as deprivation but as declaration. The space you create won't stay empty long. Like a forest clearing after a fire, it will soon bloom with the ideas and connections that truly nourish you. The Stoics knew a truth our digital age amplifies. Attention is the last true currency. Spend it recklessly, and you'll bankrupt your potential. Invest it wisely, and even ordinary moments compound into extraordinary meaning. The barking dogs will always be there. Your power lies in choosing not to turn your head. Ever notice how athletes train with weighted vests, not because they plan to run marathons while carrying extra pounds, but because when the weights come off, their ordinary stride feels like flying? That's the spirit of the 26th Stoic practice, treating life's petty annoyances as weighted vests for the soul. Epictetus laid down the challenge: is the cucumber bitter? Throw it away. Are there brambles in your path? Go around them. That's enough. Don't add. Why do such things exist? His point wasn't to ignore irritations. It was to welcome them as the universe's way of offering free training sessions. Think of the last time your Wi-Fi slowed to a crawl. Most people rage at the spinning wheel, as if frustration could speed up the signal. The Stoic alternative. Take a deep breath and treat it as a drill in patience, a chance to practice what Epictetus called einchou kai apichou, bear and forbear. Modern life is full of these hidden gems for character. The colleague who interrupts constantly becomes your humility coach, the delayed flight your meditation instructor. What if you approached these moments not as nuisances to endure, but as opportunities to level up? History's most resilient minds have used this reframe. When Thomas Edison's lab burned down in 1914, destroying years of work, he didn't collapse in despair. He told reporters, "I've just been shown all my mistakes. Now I can start fresh." That's the Stoic test in action, seeing disaster as a pop quiz on adaptability. The military understands this instinctively. Navy SEAL train in freezing water and sleep deprivation, not because missions require those extremes, but because mastering discomfort makes ordinary challenges feel trivial. Here's how to apply it today. Pick one minor frustration you'd normally avoid, maybe the long grocery line, the chatty neighbor, or the broken elevator forcing you to take the stairs. Instead of numbing out with your phone or simmering in irritation, lean into it. Feel the impatience rise, then consciously relax your jaw. Notice the urge to complain, then choose silence. These tiny exercises build what the Stoics called hegemonikon, the inner command post that stays steady when life gets loud. The magic lies in the cumulative effect. Like a pianist practicing scales daily until complex concertos feel fluid, small doses of voluntary discomfort rewire your tolerance. Try this for a week. Each time a minor annoyance arises, whisper gracious, Latin for thanks. Not for the inconvenience itself, but for the chance to grow stronger in its presence. Soon, you'll catch yourself smiling when the universe hands you another cucumber. Not because you like bitterness, but because you've learned to taste the lesson beneath it. There's a question that cuts through every excuse, every trivial pursuit, every moment of hesitation like a blade through fog. What will the person on my deathbed think of this choice? That's the 27th Stoic practice, the view from the deathbed, a mental time machine that transports you to life's final moments to borrow the clarity only hindsight can provide. Seneca framed it with haunting elegance: begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life, as if the remaining stretch were a bonus. This isn't morbid fantasizing, it's strategic perspective-taking, the ultimate antidote to living on autopilot. Consider the revelations of hospice nurse Bronnie Ware, who documented the most common regrets of the dying. Top of the list, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Notice what's missing. No one lamented working less or skipping more parties. The regrets were never about risks taken, but about love unexpressed, dreams deferred, and authenticity sacrificed at the altar of approval. The Stoics anticipated this modern research by millennia. They didn't need clinical studies to know that death awareness sharpens priorities. They practiced it daily, like mental calisthenics. Here's the twist: this exercise works precisely because it's not about guilt or fear. When you project forward to your 90th year self looking back, you're not being asked to judge, you're being handed a compass. Picture a musician choosing between a lucrative cover band gig and writing original songs. The deathbed question doesn't scorn practicality. It simply asks which path will leave her whispering, "I'm glad I tried." Steve Jobs captured this perfectly in his Stanford commencement address. "For the past 33 years, I've looked in the mirror every morning and asked, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do?" Try this today. Grab a notebook and write a letter from your 85-year-old self to who you are right now, not with grandiose advice but with specific gratitude. Thank you for quitting that toxic job in 2024. Thank you for swallowing your pride and reconciling with Dad. Feel how the words flow differently than typical goal setting. That's the power of retrospective framing. It bypasses superficial shoulds and taps into visceral truth. The brilliance of this practice lies in its flexibility. For big decisions, career shifts, relationships, financial risks, it acts like a weighted vest, adding gravity to your discernment. For daily irritations, traffic jams, petty conflicts, it's a deflating needle, reducing their perceived importance to what they'll hold in 50 years, nothing. Marcus Aurelius honed this skill on the battlefield, writing, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly." Not as a threat, but as liberation. When you consistently view today through the lens of your final days, something remarkable happens. The trivial falls away like dead leaves, revealing the sturdy branches of what truly matters. You start hearing the clock not as a countdown, but as a metronome keeping time for the music you've always wanted to play. That's the secret the Stoics guarded. Mortality isn't a spoiler alert for life's story. It's the spotlight that makes every scene vibrate with meaning. Why Zeno said we have 2 ears and 1 mouth wasn't just anatomy. It was a masterclass in the 28th Stoic practice, Stoic silence. The founder of Stoicism didn't preach muteness, but the radical discipline of weighing words like gold coins in a marketplace, spending only when the value outweighed the cost. Epictetus took it further. If you can't improve on silence, don't speak at all. Imagine a courtroom where every sentence must pass the judge's gavel before leaving your lips. That's the rigor the Stoics brought to conversation. Consider high-stakes negotiations, the moments when billion-dollar deals or international treaties hinge on precise language. Diplomats don't just prepare talking points, they rehearse pauses. FBI hostage negotiators train to speak less than 20% of the time, knowing that silence isn't emptiness, it's the canvas where the other side paints their true position. The Stoics recognized this power millennia before psychology studies confirmed that strategic silence increases perceived competence by 43%. When you resist filling airspace with chatter, your words gain gravity and your presence expands. But Stoic silence isn't just for boardrooms or crisis scenarios. It's the daily practice of catching that half-formed complaint before it escapes your throat, or letting an unkind observation dissolve on your tongue rather than crystallize into speech. Marcus Aurelius journaled about this nightly. Ask yourself, does this need to be said by me now? 3 filters that spare the world from noise and yourself from regret. Think of the last time you regretted not speaking. Odds are, the list is shorter than the words you wish you could retract. Here's how to train this muscle today. Carve out 1 hour of intentional silence. Not meditation or solitude, just pure restraint from unnecessary speech. Go about your tasks, but before opening your mouth, apply Epictetus' test. Will this improve the silence? Notice the urge to narrate your actions, to fill lulls in conversation, to vent trivial frustrations. Each time you resist, you're not just holding back words, you're strengthening the space between impulse and expression. Like a sculptor learning to see the statue hidden in marble, you'll start detecting the wisdom buried beneath the noise. The paradox: those who master Stoic silence often become the most listened to. Think of the professor whose rare comments command full attention, or the parent whose quiet "I'm disappointed" hits harder than any yell. Your voice isn't measured by how often it's heard, but by how deeply it lands. As Seneca wrote to his noisy students, "Speech is the mirror of the soul, polish it sparingly, so when it shines, all see its worth." How Stoics reprogrammed cravings wasn't through sheer willpower or deprivation. It was by making a single, radical distinction: the difference between desires rooted in nature and those grafted onto us by culture. Epictetus sliced through the confusion with surgical precision. Freedom isn't secured by filling your pockets, but by emptying your wants. At first glance, that sounds like austerity, but the Stoics were after something far more liberating: the ability to crave only what aligns with your deepest humanity. Consider the modern paradox. We live in an age of unprecedented abundance, yet anxiety and dissatisfaction surge like never before. The average person today owns more than a medieval king, yet feels perpetually behind. Why? Because consumerism doesn't sell products, it sells inadequacy. Every ad whispers, "You'll be enough when." The Stoic antidote: recognize that natural desires, nourishment, connection, purpose are finite and easily met. Unnatural ones, status symbols, viral trends, endless upgrades, are bottomless pits. Like trying to fill a sieve with water, the harder you pour, the emptier you feel. Epictetus trained his students to interrogate every craving with two questions: is this essential to my survival or virtue? And who benefits if I pursue this? The first exposes artificial needs. No one ever died from wearing last season's shoes. The second reveals manipulation: the influencer, the corporation, the algorithm that profits from your restlessness. Modern research validates this approach. A Yale study found that people who define success intrinsically growth, relationships report higher well-being than those chasing extrinsic markers, luxury cars, social media clout. The Stoics knew this millennia ago. Alignment with nature isn't about rejecting pleasure, but about refusing to let manufactured wants hijack your peace. Here's how this plays out in practice. Imagine two colleagues receiving year-end bonuses. One immediately browses luxury watch ads, already feeling the itch to spend. The other pauses, recalling Seneca's warning: poverty wants some things, greed everything. She redirects the windfall toward a wilderness survival course she's longed to take, an experience that will deepen her self-reliance. Both acted on desire, but one followed nature's whisper, the other culture's shout. Try this today. Conduct a desire audit. Open your notes app and list 3 things you've recently craved. Maybe those noise-canceling headphones, a viral skincare product, or a vacation styled like a celebrity's. Now for each, ask, does this serve my survival, my growth, or someone else's profit? You'll quickly spot the imposters. The magic lies not in elimination, but in redirection. Channel that energy toward mastering a skill, strengthening a relationship, or contributing to your community. The Stoics discovered a liberating truth: when you stop wanting the wrong things, the right ones find you effortlessly. Like clearing weeds from a garden, the space you create isn't empty, it's fertile ground for what truly nourishes. Imagine carrying an invisible counsel of the wisest minds in history, whispering guidance whenever life tests your resolve. That's the 30th Stoic practice, cultivating an inner mentor. Marcus Aurelius revealed his version in Meditations. When you need encouragement, think of the qualities of those around you: the energy of one, the modesty of another, the generosity of a third. He wasn't just admiring virtues, he was downloading them into his own operating system. Take elite athletes as modern parallels. Before a race, swimmers like Michael Phelps don't just visualize laps, they embody their heroes. You'll see them mimicking the exact stroke tempo of legends like Ian Thorpe, their muscles memorizing excellence. The Stoics did this with moral fiber. When faced with corruption in Rome's Senate, Cotto the Younger didn't waffle. He channeled the unbending integrity of his ancestor Cotto the Elder. By asking what would Cotto do, he wasn't seeking permission. He was activating a preloaded response to temptation. Here's why this works neurologically. Your brain's mirror neurons fire identically whether you perform an action or watch someone else do it. When you mentally rehearse a Stoic's response to adversity, you're laying down neural tracks for similar behavior. Epictetus took this further, urging students to adopt role models for specific challenges. When you're tempted by pleasure, remember Socrates. When anger flares, recall Zeno's composure. Try this today. Pick one Stoic sage as your go-to consultant. Facing injustice, summon Seneca's calm defiance in Nero's court, wrestling with procrastination. Invoke Marcus Aurelius rising before dawn to govern an empire. The key isn't blind imitation, it's dialogue. Pose your dilemma, then listen for how their documented choices might echo in your situation. Like a programmer importing open source code, you're grafting proven wisdom onto your decision tree. Modern psychology confirms the power of this prospective hindsight technique. A Harvard study found that people who visualized their future selves advising them made wiser choices than those relying on willpower alone. Your Stoic mentor isn't a crutch, they're a compass, recalibrating your moral GPS when distractions fog the path. As Marcus wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Surround your mind with heroes, and soon their hues will shine through your actions. Seneca's piercing words cut through 2,000 years of procrastination. Life is long enough if you know how to use it. At first glance, it sounds like reassurance until you realize he wrote this while exposing a brutal paradox. The average Roman lived about 35 years. We've nearly tripled that lifespan, yet somehow still complain about lacking time. The 31st Stoic practice confronts this illusion head-on, not by scolding, but by revealing how our perception of time's passage warps like a carnival mirror. Childhood summers stretch eternally because they're packed with firsts: first bike ride, first snowfall, first love. But as routines calcify, months blur into indistinguishable beige. Seneca saw this clearly. People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it's right to be stingy. Consider retirement planning, a modern ritual where we trade vibrant decades for spreadsheet fantasies. The math is chilling. If you start saving at 30, retire at 65, and live to 85, you're allocating more waking hours to preparing for freedom than actually experiencing it. The Stoics would have asked, why postpone living for a mirage? Marcus Aurelius ruled the known world but wrote, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. Not as morbid fatalism, but as a lens to magnify today's urgency. Here's the wake-up call most avoid. Grab a calculator. Subtract your age from 90, a generous estimate. Now multiply by 365. Those are your remaining days. But here's the twist. Deduct weekends, vacations, and inevitable sick days. Now have what's left, because only about 50% of waking hours are truly discretionary after work, chores, and obligations. The number shocks you, doesn't it? That's not pessimism, it's precision. Seneca's letters hammer this point. It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Life is long enough to accomplish everything that truly matters if every hour is invested, not spent. Modern psychology confirms what Seneca intuited. The endowment effect shows we overvalue what we own but undervalue what we are, especially time. We'll haggle over a $50 discount on a fridge but passively surrender months to mindless scrolling. The Stoic antidote: treat minutes like a non-renewable currency. Picture a billionaire offering you his fortune in exchange for your remaining years. You'd refuse instantly. Yet we trade days for trivialities without a second thought. Try this today. Audit one ordinary hour. Note how many minutes are lost to transitions. I'll start after this coffee. Distractions, checking notifications reflexively, or half-hearted effort. Then apply Seneca's razor. Does this activity expand my life or just fill it? A CEO might discover that quick meetings devour 30% of her creative energy. A student might realize social media drains more hours than lectures. This isn't about rigid productivity, it's about aligning action with awe. When astronaut Chris Hadfield trained for spacewalks, he practiced every movement until it became instinct, knowing each second in orbit cost thousands of dollars. Your time is infinitely more valuable. It's the one resource even billionaires can't replenish. The Stoics weren't urging frenzy, but intention. They'd marvel at our modern ability to binge a series in a weekend, yet never find time to learn guitar or call old friends. The difference lies in kairos, the ancient Greek concept of qualitative time, moments heavy with meaning. Retirement isn't a date on a calendar, it's the capacity to fill hours with purpose now. When Seneca said, "Begin at once to live," he meant this: stop waiting for permission slips from the universe. That project, that conversation, that quiet walk at dawn, their significance isn't deferred until some imaginary finish line. It's measured by the depth you bring to this breath, this step, this decision to use time rather than simply pass through it. How Stoics made hard decisions wasn't by agonizing over pros and cons. It was by running every choice through a four-virtue filter so precise it cut through uncertainty like a scalpel. Epictetus laid bare the method. Every action which you perform, ask yourself, is this aligned with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance? Notice what's missing: no calculation of profit, no polling of popular opinion, no weighing of convenience. Just four timeless standards that transform decision-making from guesswork into geometry. Picture a merchant in ancient Athens offered a deal to sell tainted grain at triple the price. A modern mind might rationalize it's just business or everyone does it. The Stoic applies the quadrivium: is this wise? No poisoning customers destroys trust. Courageous: no exploiting hunger is cowardice, just unjust to those who'll suffer. Temperate: greed unchecked, decision made, not from fear of punishment but from fidelity to an inner compass. This framework turns moral dilemmas into simple math. When virtue is the only variable that matters, the equation solves itself. Consider how this plays out today. A tech CEO discovers a security flaw that would cost millions to fix but hasn't been exploited yet. The board urges silence: no harm, no foul. Running the Stoic filter changes everything. Wisdom demands prevention over damage control. Courage means weathering shareholder anger. Justice protects user data unconditionally. Temperance rejects short-term windfalls for long-term integrity. The choice crystallizes not as a sacrifice, but as the only path a person of character could take. Here's how to wield this today. Pick one upcoming decision: whether to take a lucrative but soul-crushing job, confront a friend's harmful behavior, or indulge in a guilty pleasure. Now interrogate it through the four virtues like a Stoic prosecutor. Wisdom: does this align with deep understanding or momentary impulse? Courage: does it demand growth or comfort? justice, does it uplift others or serve only you? Temperance, does it respect limits or feed addiction? The gaps that appear aren't flaws in the method, they're mirrors showing where your current priorities diverge from your aspirational self. The brilliance of this practice lies in its fractal nature. Apply it to career choices or midnight snack cravings with equal rigor. Each time you do, you're not just solving a problem, you're engraving virtue deeper into your neural pathways. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, waste no more time arguing what a good person should be one. The fourfold filter isn't a tool for deliberation, it's a chisel for sculpting the person you're becoming, one decision at a time. Most people think saying no is about rejection, but the Stoics knew it's really about selection. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly, if someone can show me that what I think or do is not right, I'll gladly change, for I seek the truth by which no one was ever harmed. But if I'm clinging to my own comfort at the cost of my growth, then my yes is the real refusal. That's the 33rd Stoic practice, the art of refusal as an act of integrity, not just busyness management. Consider Warren Buffett's legendary 20-slot rule. He tells students to imagine they have a lifetime punch card with only 20 slots, each representing a major career or investment decision. Once punched, no more slots remain. The result, relentless discernment, no longer is a request judged by whether it's good, only whether it's essential. The Stoics would have recognized this instantly. Epictetus taught his students to treat time and attention like a sacred grove. Just as you wouldn't let strangers trample your private garden, why let trivial demands overrun your inner peace? Here's where most boundary-setting advice falls short. It focuses on tactics, delegating emails, batching meetings, while ignoring the core issue, unexamined values. A Stoic doesn't just decline a last-minute project because they're busy. They ask, does this align with my role as a parent, a creator, a citizen? When Marcus wrote, waste no more time arguing what a good person should be one, he was highlighting this link between refusal and identity. Every no isn't just turning something down, it's standing for something up. Try this today. Before rejecting any request, pause for Seneca's 3-question filter. First, is this demand incompatible with my principles, like a vegan refusing a leather gift? Second, does agreeing prevent me from fulfilling a higher duty? A CEO skipping a networking event to attend her daughter's recital. Third, is my reluctance just discomfort in disguise, avoiding the gym versus declining overtime to protect health? True Stoic refusal isn't reflexive, it's reverent. The magic lies in what happens after. When you start guarding your time like a temple, people don't resent you, they recalibrate. Just as Buffett's scarcity mindset attracts only serious investors, your disciplined refusals attract opportunities worthy of your yes. Notice how nature works. Trees don't apologize for refusing to grow sideways, and rivers don't negotiate their course. They simply follow their nature, and so must you. Tonight, journal about one no you'll deliver tomorrow. Not with guilt, but with the quiet certainty of a gardener pulling weeds to protect the roses. As Epictetus said, no one is ever really defeated until their own concessions make them so. Your refusals aren't losses, they're the borders of the life you're actively choosing. What really doesn't matter in the end, not as a rhetorical question, but as a brutal audit of where you've been pouring your attention. The Stoics called these adiaphora, the indifferent things, and mastering this 34th practice isn't about nihilism, but about liberation. Epictetus sliced through the confusion. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. But here's where most stumble. They mistake preferred indifference, health, comfort, reputation for true necessities. The test, remove any one of them. Does your capacity for virtue collapse? If not, it's adiaphora. Consider the billionaire who owns private jets yet still feels empty. Or the influencer with millions of followers who craves just 10 more likes. Their misery proves a universal law. Externals amplify who you already are. They don't create happiness. The Stoics weren't saying money or fame are evil. They're saying these things are neutral. Like a hammer that can build a house or break a skull, their value depends entirely on the hand that wields them. Marcus Aurelius, ruling the world's wealthiest empire, wrote his most profound meditations on this truth. You can strip away many superfluous troubles lying wholly in your judgment. Here's the modern twist. Your brain is bombarded with manufactured needs daily. That limited edition sneaker, the upgraded phone with features you'll never use, the vacation styled for Instagram rather than joy. Each whispers it's essential until you apply the Stoic stress test. Picture two travelers. One frets over lost luggage, the other shrugs and buys local clothes. Both experience the same event, only one suffers. That's the power of distinguishing preferences from requirements. Try this today. Grab a notebook and draw 2 columns. Label one seems important, the other truly is. Now list 5 items in the first, maybe your car's brand, your LinkedIn connections, or that upcoming promotion. For each, ask Epictetus' question. If I lost this tomorrow, would I still be able to choose kindness, courage, and wisdom? The surviving items migrate to column 2. What remains are your true essentials, the virtues no circumstance can steal. The magic lies in what happens next. When you stop overvaluing indifference, you start noticing their actual worth. Money becomes a tool for generosity, not a scorecard. Status transforms into a platform for service, not validation. Even pain shifts from enemy to teacher. That's the alchemy of this practice. It doesn't diminish life's joys, it purifies them. As Seneca wrote to his wealthiest student, it is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the one who craves more. Your indifference list isn't a renunciation, it's a declaration of what can't be taken from you. Between the spark of a thought and the fire of action, there's a narrow window, often no wider than a heartbeat, where freedom lives. The 35th Stoic practice is about widening that window into a doorway, installing what you might call a mental pause button. Marcus Aurelius described it with crystalline clarity. The first rule is to keep an untroubled spirit. The second is to look things in the face and know them for what they are. At its core, this isn't about suppressing reactions, it's about creating reaction space, the neurological equivalent of a circuit breaker that prevents emotional surges from burning down your better judgment. Modern neuroscience reveals why this works. When your boss criticizes your work or a driver cuts you off, your amygdala, the brain's threat detector, can hijack your prefrontal cortex in under half a second. But here's the critical detail. It takes 6 full seconds for cortisol and adrenaline to metabolize enough for rational thought to regain control. Those 6 seconds are your Stoic pause button in action. Ancient warriors knew this instinctively. Samurai trained to exhale slowly before unsheathing their swords, not just to steady their hands, but to let the biochemical storm pass. The count to 10 anger technique parents teach children isn't arbitrary, it's evolutionary wisdom dressed in simplicity. Consider 2 colleagues receiving the same harsh feedback. One immediately flushes with heat, firing off a defensive email she'll regret by lunch. The other, though equally stung, turns to her notebook and scribbles 3 lines. What's true here? What's exaggerated? What can I learn? That notebook is her pause button. By inserting even 15 seconds of deliberate friction between stimulus and response, she transforms raw emotion into actionable insight. The Stoics called this prosouch attention to the gap where choice lives. Here's how to wire this circuitry into your daily life. Pick one high-frequency trigger, maybe interruptions during work, criticism from a partner, or political headlines. Now design a micro-ritual for that specific scenario. If emails spike your pulse, set a rule. Always draft replies in a separate document and revisit them after a 5-minute walk. If traffic ignites road rage, keep a Stoic quote on your dashboard and recite it aloud before turning the key. These aren't just tricks, they're training drills for the mind. Like a pianist practicing scales until finger placements become instinct, you're rehearsing pause until it becomes your default setting. The magic lies in cumulative effect. At first, you'll hit the pause button after losing your temper, like slamming the brakes post-collision. With practice, you'll catch the surge earlier, during the deep breath before speaking. Eventually, you'll sense the spark before it ignites, noticing your jaw clench during a stressful call and choosing to soften it consciously. That's when the Stoic pause stops being a tactic and starts being part of your architecture. Marcus left us the ultimate reminder. You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. The events themselves are neutral. It's the unchecked space between them and you that dictates their weight. Try this today. Program 1 pause button ritual for the coming week. Make it physical, a sip of water before answering a provocative text or standing to stretch before a difficult conversation. The body's movements anchor the mind's reset, because here's the truth no one tells you about self-discipline. It's not about controlling your reactions. It's about lengthening the runway where they take off, giving your better self time to board the plane. Picture your energy as a flashlight in a vast cave. You can either aim it at the distant, unreachable ceiling or illuminate the path immediately before you. That's the essence of the 36th Stoic practice, the circle of influence. Epictetus framed it with typical bluntness. Some things are up to us and some are not. The quicker you sort them, the freer you become. This isn't passive acceptance, it's strategic focus. Your mental and emotional resources are finite. Pour them into the cracks you can actually fill, not the canyons beyond your reach. Consider climate change, an issue so massive it paralyzes many into inaction. The Stoic approach recognizes the concentric rings of influence. At the outer edge, global policies and corporate emissions, where your individual impact feels like a raindrop in the ocean. Move inward, your community's recycling programs or local conservation efforts, where your voice carries weight. At the center, your daily choices, plant-based meals, energy consumption, voting habits. The activist Greta Thunberg didn't start by lecturing world leaders. She began with a solo school strike outside Swedish Parliament. Small actions compound when focused where leverage exists. Here's where most people stumble. They confuse concern with control. Worrying about airline safety while driving distracted is like shaking your fist at thunder while ignoring the puddle at your feet. Seneca observed this paradox. We suffer more in imagination than reality. The parent agonizing over hypothetical college rejections 10 years away wastes energy that could enrich their child's current learning environment. The entrepreneur fretting over economic trends neglects the product improvements within their grasp. Try this today. Grab a blank sheet of paper and draw 3 concentric circles. Label the innermost control actions depending solely on you, your effort, your attitude. The middle ring, influence areas where your input affects outcomes, team projects, local initiatives. The outermost, concern issues you care about but can't directly change, geopolitics, others' opinions. Now list current stressors in each. That argument with your spouse. Control your responses. Your company's stock price may be just concern. This exercise does something startling. It shrinks overwhelming problems into manageable segments while revealing hidden agency. The magic lies in redirection, not resignation. When the Roman general Scipio faced Carthage's superior navy, he didn't waste troops on sea battles, he trained them to fight on ships as if they were land, turning weakness into strength. Your circles work the same way. That colleague who constantly complains, shift from trying to change their attitude, concern, to setting boundaries around your exposure, control. The industry disruption threatening your job, stop refreshing doomscroll news, concern, and dedicate an hour daily to skill-building control. Epictetus left us the ultimate litmus test. Ask yourself, is this within my power? If yes, act decisively. If no, release gracefully. Like a gardener who tends the soil instead of cursing the weather, you'll find your harvest grows abundant where your hands actually reach. What if you were them, not just imagining their situation, but truly inhabiting their fears, their unseen pressures, their unspoken triggers? That's the 37th Stoic practice, role reversal, an ancient thought experiment that dissolves blind spots by forcing you to stand where your opponent stands. Plato first formalized this in the Republic with a piercing challenge. Before you criticize a man, walk a mile in his shoes. The Stoics took it further, treating it not as occasional empathy training, but as daily mental hygiene. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who signed death warrants between philosophy sessions, wrote with startling vulnerability, "When men are inhuman, take care not to feel towards them as they do towards others." Consider high-stakes diplomacy, the moments when nuclear codes or trade wars hang in the balance. The FBI's top negotiators don't just study their counterparts' demands, they rehearse being them. Before engaging hostage takers, they map out the other's childhood traumas, recent humiliations, even sleep deprivation variables that transform irrational acts into tragically logical ones. Chris Voss, former lead FBI negotiator, calls this tactical empathy, not to excuse harm, but to navigate it with precision. The Stoics anticipated this by millennia. When Seneca advised, "Be harsh with yourself but kind to others," he wasn't preaching niceness, he was teaching strategy. Understanding the shopkeeper who overcharges you isn't about tolerating dishonesty. It's about recognizing his desperation to feed his children, then crafting a response that addresses the root, not just the symptom. Here's where most attempts at perspective-taking fail. They stop at, "I see your point." The Stoic version digs deeper. Picture a colleague undermining your project. Instead of seething, you journal from their desk. Why would a reasonable person act this way? Maybe they're terrified of layoffs and think sabotaging others secures their job. Perhaps they're drowning in personal debt and lash out from shame. These revelations don't excuse the behavior, they equip you to disarm it. Marcus modeled this during Germanic invasions, writing, "When offended, think, they do this because they believe it's right, then show them better." Try this today. Pick one active conflict, a family feud, a workplace tension, even road rage with a stranger. Now, borrow Plato's cloak and write 3 sentences as them, voicing their hidden fears or unmet needs. "I snap at my team because my wife's illness is draining our savings, and control at work feels like my last lifeline." Feel how the anger softens into something more potent clarity. You're not surrendering your position, you're gaining the high ground from which to resolve it. The genius of role reversal lies in its dual payoff. It doesn't just humanize the other, it reveals your own biases. Like a sculptor turning a statue to expose shadows, you'll spot assumptions you never knew you carried. Epictetus nailed it. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak. In a world algorithmically engineered to confirm prejudices, this practice isn't just philosophy, it's survival gear for the soul. Seneca didn't wait for burnout to force a break. He scheduled retreats like a general planning strategic pauses between battles. His letters reveal a radical habit, leaving Rome's chaos for his countryside villa, where he'd spend days in what he called cessation, deliberate withdrawal from the noise of society. The crowd leaves no room for the mind to unfold. He wrote, describing how solitude wasn't escapism, but the whetstone that sharpened his reason. 2,000 years later, our distractions have evolved from forum gossip to algorithmic feeds, but the need for retreat remains unchanged. The 38th Stoic practice, the Stoic Sabbath, isn't about religious observance, but about reclaiming sovereignty over your attention through periodic digital and philosophical retreats. Imagine your mind as a clear mountain lake. Each notification, obligation, and distraction is a pebble tossed into the water, ripples overlapping until the surface becomes unreadable. The Stoic Sabbath is letting those ripples settle. Modern research confirms Seneca's intuition. A Stanford study found that just 4 days immersed in nature without devices boosted creative problem solving by 50%. But you don't need a wilderness expedition. A tech CEO who unplugs every Sunday isn't losing productivity. He's practicing what Cal Newport calls a digital minimalism, creating space for the kind of deep reflection that fuels breakthroughs. Here's how Seneca structured his retreats and how you can adapt them. First, he set a clear duration, sometimes weeks, often just a day. For modern practitioners, even 4 hours can reset your mental compass. Next, he defined the retreat's purpose: reading philosophy, journaling, or simply observing nature. No agenda beyond presence. Compare this to how most people relax today, scrolling through streaming options for 30 minutes before settling on something mediocre. The Stoic Sabbath flips this. It's not about consuming content, but about creating space for contentment. Try this starting next weekend. Block a half day for your own Stoic Sabbath. Turn off all devices, not just silent, but out of sight. Grab a notebook and walk somewhere green, even if it's just a city park. Notice how your thoughts initially race like caged animals released into unfamiliar terrain. That's the withdrawal from dopamine hits. By the second hour, you'll start hearing subtler frequencies, the itch of an unfinished project, the quiet guilt over neglected relationships, the half-formed idea buried under busyness. That's the clarity Seneca described. In solitude, the mind gathers what crowds dissipate. The magic lies in consistency. Just as muscles grow through regular training, your focus deepens with scheduled retreats. A graphic designer might notice how Sunday screen-free walks spark Monday's best concepts. A parent might find patience replenished after a morning journaling in the backyard. Seneca's secret wasn't the length of his retreats, but their regularity, like resetting a compass before it drifts too far off course. Your modern Stoic Sabbath isn't a luxury. It's maintenance for the most vital tool you own, your undistracted mind. Imagine standing at a crossroads where every path looks tempting, but only one aligns with who you truly aspire to be. The Stoics didn't leave this to gut feeling. They built a 4-pillar bridge to guide such moments. Wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance weren't just ideals to admire. They were a working filter for daily decisions. Marcus Aurelius captured their interdependence. Excellence is not an act, but a habit, the result of choices tested against the full spectrum of virtue. Take a modern ethical dilemma. Your company discovers a manufacturing flaw that could cause minor safety issues, but recalling the product would cost millions. The conventional approach might weigh profit against risk, but the Stoic method transforms the calculus. Wisdom asks, what do long-term data and expert analysis reveal about potential harm? Courage challenges, are we delaying action because fixing this is hard, or because it's truly negligible? Justice shifts the lens. How would we feel if our own child used this product? Temperance checks the impulse to rationalize. Is this a balanced response, or are extremes of panic or indifference driving us? History's defining moments often turn on this four-virtue alignment. When Johnson & Johnson recalled 31 million bottles of Tylenol in 1982 after cyanide tampering, they didn't convene focus groups. They acted because their credo, mirroring Stoic virtues, made the choice inevitable. Contrast this with executives who approve shady accounting to meet quarterly targets, fracturing all four virtues at once. The gap isn't in intelligence, it's in the rigor of their decision filter. Here's how to activate this today. Reflect on a recent decision. Maybe you snapped at a coworker or postponed a dental checkup to meet a deadline. Now replay it through the virtues. Wisdom, did I have all the facts before reacting? Courage, did I avoid the conversation out of discomfort? Justice, did my actions consider others' well-being? Temperance, was my response proportionate or emotionally amplified? Like a chef tasting a dish and adjusting all four basic flavors, you'll spot where your choices lacked balance. The magic lies in the system, not the individual virtues alone. A soldier charging into battle displays courage, but without justice, he becomes a mercenary. A judge applying wisdom without temperance slips into rigidity. The Stoics saw these as interlocking gears. Remove one, and the mechanism jams. Epictetus warned his students, partial virtue is like painting a masterpiece with three colors. The result will always feel incomplete. Try this tonight. Draft tomorrow's to-do list, then asterisk items that pass all four filters. That difficult feedback conversation, it grows a check mark under courage and justice. The extra hour scrolling, it vanishes under temperance's gaze. Over time, these tiny audits rewire your brain to spot misalignments faster, like a musician who hears off-key notes before they're fully played. Marcus left a final clue in his meditations. Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be one. The four-virtue filter isn't about endless deliberation. It's about building a compass so reliable, your choices begin to navigate themselves. When wisdom lights the path, courage fuels the steps, justice guides the direction, and temperance sets the pace, you're no longer walking, you're living virtue in motion. Gratitude practiced superficially is like watering a plant's leaves instead of its roots. It might look nice, but it won't sustain growth. The 40th Stoic practice, the gratitude list, transforms casual thankfulness into a radical recalibration of perception. Epictetus laid the foundation. Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happen the way it happens. At its core, this isn't about counting blessings. It's about redefining what qualifies as one. Consider the cancer survivors who describe their diagnosis as a gift. Not because they enjoyed suffering, but because illness stripped away trivial concerns, revealing relationships and moments they'd taken for granted. The Stoics called this Amor Fati. The love of fate, and modern science confirms its power. Research from UC Davis shows that participants who journaled about adversities they were grateful for developed stronger emotional resilience than those focusing only on positive events. The key difference, they weren't just appreciating good fortune, they were mining meaning from misfortune. Here's how Stoic gratitude diverges from the mainstream version. Typical lists might include my job or my health. The Stoic approach digs deeper. What friction in my job pushed me to innovate? How has my chronic pain heightened my appreciation for good days? This isn't toxic positivity. It's alchemy transforming leaden experiences into golden insights. Marcus Aurelius modeled this in his journals, thanking even his critics. The people who irritate me teach me patience. The arrogant ones teach me humility. Try this tonight. Grab a notebook and list 3 undesirable blessings. Maybe it's the rejection letter that redirected your career, the flat tire that led to a life-changing conversation, or the insomnia that gifted you quiet mornings to write. Epictetus' challenge echoes, could you have grown without these? The answer will often surprise you. The magic lies in the shift from passive appreciation to active engagement. A chef doesn't just give thanks for ingredients, he respects their limits and potential. Similarly, when you start seeing obstacles as raw materials for growth, gratitude stops being a reaction and becomes a lens. That's when you understand the Stoic secret. True thankfulness isn't felt in the heart first, it's chosen by the mind, until the heart catches up. How to break your worst impulses before they steer you off course. That's the power of the 41st Stoic practice, the Stoic speed bump. Seneca saw anger as the perfect case study. The greatest remedy for anger is delay. Not suppression, not denial, just a deliberate pause between the spark and the explosion. Picture a match held too close to kindling. That split second where you can still blow it out is all the Stoic speed bump demands. Modern neuroscience confirms this ancient insight. The amygdala triggers emotional reactions in milliseconds, but the prefrontal cortex, your brain's brake pedal, takes a full 6 seconds to engage. Those 6 seconds are where discipline is born. Consider the 24-hour rule adopted by savvy shoppers and seasoned investors alike. Before any non-essential purchase, they impose a cooling-off period. That espresso machine calling your name at midnight, sleep on it. The limited time offer pressuring you to click buy now, bookmark it and revisit tomorrow. This isn't about denying yourself, it's about distinguishing genuine value from dopamine's cheap tricks. Warren Buffett credits this practice with avoiding countless bad deals, quipping, "The stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient." The Stoics would have nodded in approval. They didn't just delay purchases, they built pauses into every high-stakes decision. Here's how to engineer your own speed bumps. Start with one recurring impulse, maybe interrupting in meetings, late-night snacking, or firing off reactive emails. Design a micro-ritual that inserts friction. For the interrupter, it might mean jotting thoughts on paper before speaking. For the snacker, drinking a full glass of water before opening the fridge. For the emailer, saving drafts in a review tomorrow folder. Like a judo master using an opponent's momentum against them, you're not fighting impulses, you're redirecting their energy. The magic lies in consistency. At first, you'll hit the brakes after the car has already lurched forward, catching yourself mid-complaint or realizing you've already spent too much. With practice, you'll start sensing the acceleration before your foot presses the gas. That's when the Stoic speed bump stops being a tactic and becomes part of your wiring. Try this today. Pick one decision you'd normally make instantly and impose a 10-minute buffer, not to change the outcome, but to ensure it's truly yours. As Seneca warned, no wind favors the ship without a destination. Your pauses aren't obstacles, they're navigational tools. Every successful company holds quarterly earnings calls, not to dwell on past performance, but to course correct for the future. The Stoics ran a similar operation on their souls, conducting what we'll call the character audit. Picture this: every 90 days, Seneca would retreat to his study with 3 questions etched in wax. Am I closer to wisdom or just more knowledgeable? Braver or simply more stubborn, more just or better at justifying myself? This 40-second practice isn't about tallying virtues like a grocery list, it's about measuring the quality of your growth. Epictetus framed it with typical bluntness. Progress isn't measured by how many books you've read, but by how many sleepless nights your principles have cost you. Consider Warren Buffett's annual shareholder letters, meticulous reports dissecting not just financials, but decision-making. He doesn't just celebrate Berkshire Hathaway's wins, he dissects his own misjudgments with surgical honesty. That's the spirit of the character audit. Your shareholders aren't Wall Street analysts, they're the people impacted by your choices, your family, your team, your future self. The Stoics tracked different metrics than modern corporations, but their rigor was identical. Wisdom wasn't counted in pages read, but in moments where anger was disarmed before it fired. Courage wasn't tallied in risks taken, but in truth spoken when silence was safer. Here's how to conduct yours today. Grab a notebook and divide a page into 2 columns, aspirations and evidence. Under aspirations, list 3 virtues you're cultivating, perhaps patience, integrity, or resilience. Now, in the evidence column, jot specific instances where those virtues were tested. Not "I'm more patient," but "last Tuesday, I listened fully to my daughter's story instead of cutting her off to check my phone." The gap between these columns isn't failure, it's your growth map. Like a CEO comparing projections to actuals, you're identifying where effort aligns with impact. The magic happens in the discrepancies. Maybe you'll notice you've equated busyness with courage, mistaking overwork for perseverance. Or perhaps you've confused stoic indifference with emotional suppression, avoiding conflict rather than mastering it. Marcus Aurelius modeled this in his journals, confessing, "I've allowed the trivial to distract me from the essential." Not with self-flagellation, but with the calm precision of a gardener noting which plants need more sun. Try this now. Set a timer for 5 minutes and audit one area. Relationships. Have my conversations this month lifted others or just relieved my loneliness? Health. Am I respecting my body as a borrowed instrument or neglecting it for short-term comfort? The audit's power lies in its regularity, not annual introspection but quarterly recalibration. Like a pilot adjusting course mid-flight, you're not waiting to crash before checking your instruments. Epictetus left us the ultimate audit question. If someone described your character to you, would you recognize it as yours? That's the litmus test no spreadsheet can capture. When your private actions align with your public ideals so tightly that no audit could expose hypocrisy, you've reached stoic profitability, the kind that compounds in quiet confidence rather than noisy approval. Your philosophical touchstone isn't just a list of ideals, it's the lifeline you grip when storms threaten to capsize your judgment. Imagine a ship's anchor plunged deep into bedrock while waves rage above. That's what the Stoics called proherses, the unshakable core of principles that keeps you upright when chaos demands compromise. Marcus Aurelius described this return to fundamentals with vivid simplicity. When you're pressed hard, retreat into your own mind. No harbor offers more calm than the shores of your reason. Notice the word retreat. This isn't about running from reality, but about regrouping where no external force can reach you. Consider how emergency rooms operate during crises. Amidst the screams and blood, the best physicians don't freeze or improvise, they fall back on triage protocols engraved in their training. Color-coded tags, priority hierarchies, systematic assessments, these are their stoic anchors. The chaos doesn't disappear, but their response becomes automatic, freeing mental bandwidth for nuanced decisions. The Stoics engineered the same fail-safe for the soul. When Seneca faced false accusations from Nero, his defense wasn't frantic rebuttals. It was rereading his own letters on integrity, reminding himself, a gem cannot be polished without friction. Here's why this practice matters now more than ever. Modern life bombards us with endless simulations of crisis market crashes, social media scandals, personal betrayals, each designed to trigger knee-jerk reactions. The Stoic anchor is your antidote. Picture a CEO navigating a PR disaster. Instead of scrambling to please outraged stakeholders, she consults her pre-written crisis compass, 3 principles drafted in comma days. Truth first, empathy always, solutions over blame. These aren't slogans, they're decision algorithms. Try this today. Carve 10 minutes to define your 3 anchors. Not vague aspirations like be kind, but specific, actionable tenets. A teacher might choose, listen twice as much as I speak, grade fairly, not conveniently. Protect curiosity over compliance. A parent might anchor to model patience even when tired, apologize promptly when wrong, prioritize presence over presence. Write them where you'll see them daily, not as decorations but as drills. The test comes when emotions run high. That moment when you're tempted to lash out, cut corners, or surrender to despair, your anchors become the questions that recenter you. Does this choice align with my first principle? If I acted this way consistently, who would I become? Marcus left a clue in his journals. The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. Your anchors don't eliminate obstacles. They transform them into touchstones, proving what you're made of each time you hold fast. Like a climber's carabiner snapping securely onto a mountain face, they're the difference between a fatal fall and merely hanging on until you find your next foothold. The final Stoic practice isn't about how you'll be remembered, it's about how you'll ripple. Seneca captured this with an image that still resonates today. A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they'll never sit in. That's the essence of the 44th practice, the legacy drill. It shifts the question from what will people say about me to what will continue working when I'm gone. Not fame, but fingerprints. Think of Einstein's unpublished papers. In 1955, the physicist left behind a desk filled with scribbled equations, not for peer approval or prizes, but because he sensed they might matter decades later. In 2022, researchers discovered those notes contained clues to dark energy, advancing cosmology long after his death. That's legacy thinking, acting with a horizon beyond your own lifespan. The Stoics called this prosouch attention stretched across generations. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations as private reflections, never intending publication. Yet 2 millennia later, soldiers and CEOs still carry his words into battles both literal and metaphorical. Here's where most legacy plans fail. They focus on monuments rather than momentum. A billionaire might fund a hospital wing with his name in marble, while a teacher quietly instills curiosity in students who'll cure diseases. Both leave traces, but one is stone, the other is a current. The legacy drill bypasses ego by asking, does this create dependency or capacity? Building a village well leaves people waiting for repairs. Teaching well digging ignites endless flow. Try this today. Pick one action that meets Seneca's shade test. It could be as tangible as mentoring a junior colleague with meticulous patience, knowing they'll outgrow you. Or as subtle as writing a letter to your future grandchild about lessons no textbook teaches. Even mundane choices gain gravity when viewed through this lens. That email you're drafting, will its tone echo as encouragement or corrosion in someone's memory? The feedback you withhold, could its absence leave a gap others stumble into years later? Einstein's desk and Seneca's trees share a secret. Legacy isn't about scale, but about seeds. You don't need a podium to plant ideas that outlive you, just the courage to act as if time is your collaborator, not your captor. The final Stoic challenge is this: live now so that later becomes lighter, even if no one remembers your name. The journey of self-discipline isn't about conquering some distant summit, it's about the daily steps that reshape who you are. Look back at the 44 practices we've explored. Morning reflections that anchor your days, voluntary discomfort that builds resilience, the Stoic pause that creates space between impulse and action. Each one circles back to three unshakable truths: control what you can, reframe what you can't, and act with unwavering integrity. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king who ruled an empire, found his power not in dominion over others but in mastery of his own judgments. His words cut to the heart of it. The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing, not about grace, but about standing firm no matter how rough the match. That's the Stoic secret. Discipline isn't a trophy to win. It's the mat you roll out every morning to train on. Perfection was never the goal. Even Seneca, the great Stoic teacher, confessed to losing his temper. What mattered was the return, the conscious choice to realign. Think of a sailor adjusting course. No single correction guarantees smooth sailing, but each one prevents drifting further off track. Modern psychology echoes this ancient wisdom. Studies on habit formation show that consistency beats intensity every time. It's better to meditate for 5 minutes daily than for 3 hours once a month. The path itself is the transformation. When Marcus wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one," he wasn't demanding flawlessness. He was inviting you to start where you stand. Now comes the real test. Don't let this be just another video you watch and forget. Scroll back and pick 3 practices that resonate most, maybe the view from above when stress mounts, or the evening review to distill daily lessons, or precommitment to outsmart temptation. Write them down now, not tomorrow, not someday. The Stoics didn't philosophize in theory, they drilled in reality. Epictetus, born a slave, became a legendary teacher not by lecturing but by living these principles in the grit of daily existence. Your turn. Hit subscribe if you're ready to go deeper. We're just scratching the surface of Stoic wisdom that can rewire how you face challenges, setbacks, and even success. But first, close this tab and do one thing today that your future self will thank you for. Not because it's easy, but because you're stronger than the part of you that hesitates. The world needs more people who have done the inner work.